Okay, today I'm just going to do a quick setup guide on how to connect your Kedio node to your Boot Camp MacBook Pro. This video is for people who already own the 2016 and 2017 Apple MacBook Pros and don't really want to go out and build their own custom gaming PC and just want to spend a few extra $100 just to allow them to play some games occasionally. So for all those people, this guide is for you. This setup is for external displays only. If you want to use your MacBook Pro and your Kedio node for the internal display, that is a far more complicated setup, and I'll leave a link to a forum post that it kind of explains it a little bit better than I could. Now, another caveat to this setup is that it's only going to work with the 2016 and 2017 MacBook Pros. If you have an older MacBook Pro, I'm sorry, you're out of luck here. And I'm assuming that you already have Boot Camp Windows installed on your MacBook Pro. If you do not, I'm not going to walk you through that here, but I will leave a link to a really great, excellent guide on how to do that from 9to5Mac. I'll leave that down in the description so you can go check that out if you need to get that set up. In this setup, I'm going to be using a 2016 15-inch MacBook Pro paired with a GTX 1060 graphics card inside of the Kedio node. So this setup should be relatively the same for any 15-inch 2016 or 2017 MacBook Pro model and any NVIDIA graphics card, but if you're using a 13-inch model or an AMD graphics card, this may be different and may not work out for you, so just keep that in mind. Now to start, make sure nothing is connected to your MacBook Pro yet. You can have your power cable attached if you need to, but nothing else. Now from macOS, go ahead and reboot into your Windows Boot Camp. Now once you're in your Windows Boot Camp partition, go ahead and connect your Kedio node to the top left port of your MacBook Pro. After you do that, click on the start icon and type in Device Manager and press enter. Now this should bring up your Device Manager window. Once you're there, click View and select Devices by Connection. Once you're there, look for the connection that ends in X81905. Click the drop-down arrow on that connection, and underneath that, you should see another drop-down arrow next to something labeled Upstream. From there, what you're going to want to do is disable the second and third downstream connection. These should be the connections without any drop-down arrows next to them. Essentially, you're doing this to free up some resources to allow your Kedio node to boot with your Windows device without crashing. If you tried connecting your Kedio node into your MacBook Pro while it's booting into Boot Camp and you're getting errors and it keeps crashing or keeps getting frozen on the first start initial screen, it's because you don't have enough resources to run your Kedio node along with the rest of the devices inside of the MacBook Pro already. So essentially what you're doing here is disabling that bottom left Thunderbolt 3 port to allow the top Thunderbolt 3 port to give more resources to your Kedio node. Now this does make your bottom left port unusable. You're not going to be able to connect any devices to it. It's not going to function at all. But you can connect your charger to it and will provide power to your MacBook Pro. And while you can use your MacBook Pro with your Kedio node without being plugged in, I highly recommend you plugging in your MacBook Pro into that bottom left port just to relieve some stress and some power drain from your Kedio node. Now that you have those two connections disabled, go ahead and restart your MacBook Pro. But before you do, make sure to plug in any additional devices into the right-hand side that you're going to want to use. I say this because once you reboot and you start using your Kedio node, you're going to notice that anything you plug into your right-hand side or unplug from your right-hand side while you're using your Kedio node is going to cause your computer to crash. My assumption is that this is caused because you're basically taking away resources from your Kedio node. So if you plug something in and then remove it, it's essentially kind of screwing around with the resources your computer has and just causes everything to shut down and crash. Now so far I haven't noticed any major issues with this. I just make sure to leave everything plugged in before I restart into using my Kedio node, and you can go ahead and leave these connections disabled the entire time. You don't have to go back and re-enable these connections ever again. Once you boot back into macOS, these connections are going to re-enable themselves and it's not going to cause any issues for you in macOS. It just disables them for your Windows partition. And of course, if you unplug your Kedio node while you're using it in the Boot Camp Windows, it is also going to cause your system to crash. So don't do that. Just make sure to shut down or restart into macOS to get rid of it. And that's basically it. You should be good to go. After you reboot, you should be able to start seeing your Kedio node. You are going to notice longer than normal boot time. It does take about 2 to 3 minutes for my computer to boot up once it's plugged into the Kedio node and starts using the Kedio node. But after you restart and boots up, you're basically using your Kedio node. As you can see right now, it's using the Kedio node to display to this external display from my graphics card. It's not plugged in directly to the MacBook. It's just plugged into the Kedio node, and the Kedio node is plugged into the MacBook Pro. Now, one extra pro tip, make sure to go ahead and set your computer to display to second screen only or to PC only. I say to set it to PC screen only because sometimes the Mac does get confused and doesn't know whether or not your external display is your PC screen or your second screen. So far it's been switching back and forth on me. It's not a huge issue. Every time I just reboot, I just set it to one or the other and it switches back pretty nicely. And then after you do that, you can go ahead and close your MacBook Pro and just keep it in clamshell mode and never have to open it again. Use an external mouse or keyboard or do whatever you want. You can also leave it open and just use the mouse and keyboard on the MacBook, but I don't know why would you do that. Now with all eGPUs, you're gonna notice about a 10 to 20% drop in performance from using this with like a dedicated built PC. that's not a huge issue for me. I'm using only a 1060. I wouldn't recommend people going too high up in the graphics card department since you are going to lose some of that performance anyway. I kind of equate this to how laptop graphics cards work. You're losing some percentage of the actual desktop grade graphics card, but in the end it still works great. I've had no issue with it. I have no snags or like glitches when I'm running software, and I'm also running all of my games off an external SSD. I didn't want to take too much space off my Mac to partition it into Windows, and it still works perfectly. It has no trouble running the games off of an SSD and off of the Aikido node off of the MacBook Pro. And just another tip, sometimes the Aikido node would not be recognized on the left-hand ports. If that happens, go ahead and re-enable both downstream ports, then connect your Aikido node to the right-hand side ports, and then disable the X8 side completely. And then it should work and you should be able to reinstall the drivers and do all the good stuff like that. If that still doesn't work, go ahead and check that link to the forums I mentioned earlier. There's a bunch of people just talking about how to get these things to work and set up. I'm not an expert on external GPUs. I'm just a hobbyist who wanted to get more gaming potential out of my MacBook Pro. Anyway guys, if this video helped you out, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. I just passed 1,000 subscribers very recently. I'm really happy about that. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave your comments down below. I'll try to get to everybody. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just kind of a hobbyist. So if you have any like serious critical issues, feel free to go to the forums and check that out and see what they say. I am not responsible if you break your MacBook Pro somehow. I'm just saying this is what worked for me. So hopefully it can work for you as well. But as always, my name is Joshua Joe Munoz. Stay sexy, and I'll see you sometime.